Hi, this is Scott Flint. I'm the Senior Chief Instructor here at Westwind Schools, and this video is dedicated to those amazing students who've reached brown belt and are now making the transition to black belt. It's a really tough challenge. One of the hardest times for us as a martial artist is to make that jump. And one of the difficult parts of that test is the Chinese spear, the Chinese spear and the three sectional. And I'd like to do this video series to help you guys to really know the details of those two forms. They do come at a hard time for us on the test. Sorry about the chickens in the background. I'm over in the backyard of my house rather than at the school. One really great friend of mine, Miss Rochelle, who's an amazing martial art instructor, amazing person. She asked that if I could do this video to help with people that are learning the three sectional and spear, because it's a pretty difficult form. It's over 120 moves, and it's something that if you have a video reference, it can really make a difference. This comes from when myself and Mr. Fisher, we took our black belt test back in 1984, and our teacher, Master Lee, asked if we could develop a weapons form for our black belt test, and we did a three sectional against spear, traditional style. And he really liked it so much, he said he'd like to have it be part of the system. So now we're teaching it for all of our brown belts going from brown to black. And it does, again, come at a difficult time of the test. So we're going to try to get this down really strong so that you'll be able to have a really good showing on your test and be really proud about how you did. The proper weapon for the Chinese spear that you should get is not something like this. This is actually a Japanese spear I made. This is a spearhead off of a 51 Pontiac leaf spring that I made with my forging. And this is an oak staff. So this is more of Japanese spear, which is very stable and very powerful oriented. Kind of the concept of the Japanese system, one strike, one kill, like you really have a lot of power. Whereas the Chinese spear is flexible and very fast and much lighter. This is probably about 3 times heavier than a Chinese spear. But I'm sorry, it's the only one I had with me today because my Chinese spear's at the school. The one you should have on your black belt test is not sharp like this one. This one's pretty much razor sharp. You want to have, we'll put a link in the description below, and let's put a picture up here of what the Chinese spear should look like. But it's a smaller spear head. It has a chamber in here that has a few BBs that rattle around to create an auditory distraction, and then also has a really bright red tassel. It used to be made of horsehair back in the old days, that was used to visually distract the enemy and also to keep blood from coming down onto the shaft. So that would be a more traditional Chinese spear. That's the one you should train with. That's the one you should present on your black belt test. And the wood is very different. It's a flexible, very light wood called Chinese waxwood. It's actually pliable. You can actually kind of bend it into a certain shape. It tends to be a little bit skinnier here at the base, probably about 1 inch, and it might get out to about 1.25 inches or even 1.5 inches at the end. The height of a Chinese spear, if it fits you correctly, should be pretty tall. If you stand and you put your hand up in the air, and you have the base of the weapon on the ground, the spear head should come up to about mid-palm. That'd be pretty long. So this one's actually too short for me. It's a good size for a Japanese spear, but Chinese spear should be a lot taller. So we're going to break down the form into 6 sections. If you look at the pattern of the form, it basically goes out toward the front, toward 12 o'clock for a few steps. Then it makes a right turn, 90-degree turn, and it does a lot of steps to the right, and it goes for a long distance. So if you're on a rectangular mat, you put your back to the long side of that mat over to your far left, and then you would go out a little bit away from the wall to about mid-mat, and then a lot of the form goes off to the side, to your right, and it kind of recounts itself back to where you started, and then it goes backwards to where you actually first started. The three sectional side is exactly opposite, like a mirror image. So the two sides are designed to mesh together. And it's a really cool form. I'm really happy that Master Lee liked it and wanted it to be part of the system. So we'll go over the steps. The first sequence we call the 12 o'clock sequence, and it's kind of short, and it's just going straight ahead from your starting point. It encompasses a salutation and then a couple of moves that are designed to intimidate your opponent. You're not even making contact yet. It's just an old style in Chinese tradition would be to show your style of martial arts before you actually start fighting, so the other person can relent and maybe back out, and maybe you don't even have a conflict. So the 3 sectional and the spear have a little sequence in the beginning where they're not even actually hitting each other, they're just kind of showing off their technique, and then eventually they go into combat. So that first sequence will be a salutation, a little bit of showing the technique, and then there's a few points of contact with the 3 sectional, and that'll be the 12 o'clock aspect. And then there's going to be right turn going out to your side, and then we're going to have that sequence, and then we'll actually end up with 6 total parts. Best idea is to get the first sequence out toward 12 o'clock from the video and from your instructor too, and practice it over and over and over and really get it solid before you do the next sequence going off to your right. And again, there'll be 6 total. If you can do, say, 10 to 15 reps of each new sequence before you add the next one, that should really help. It's not a real good rhyme or reason to this form. It tends to encompass all of the possible strikes and all the possible blocks and ways of using a Chinese spear. But there's no pattern really to it that is easy to remember. So it's more rote memory. You just have to do it over and over and over to really get it. When I've watched this spear kata done in the past, again, this goes way back to 1984, so it's been 38 years, 39 years that it's been in existence. When people get tired or they're in a rush, they tend to do some shortcutting that is very untraditional, but we'll talk about that. We call it, in Japanese, they call it a kihon or a basic. One of those basics with a Chinese spear is how you hold it. So with a Chinese spear, you want to hold your backhand, in this case I'm using my right hand, would be about 1 to 2 fists up from the end. And then your mid hand will be mid weapon, so right on the shaft, mid weapon. Whenever you're holding with your front hand or your mid hand, you want to have it encompassing the weapon, but then your index finger should be straight on the shaft, and it points exactly where you want to hit. It's kind of like the front sight of a pistol or of a rifle. That's where it's gonna go. So that's how you would hold your front hand. It wouldn't be like this. That'd be more for a Japanese spear, but it'd be where it would encompass, and then your finger would be straight, pointing to where you want the weapon to go. When you spear with the Chinese style, you take your backhand and you move it, but your front hand doesn't move. So the backhand is driving the weapon, coming back, but your front hand is staying very still. What people do wrong is they push with their backhand, but they also pull their front hand back to make the two meet. But that's not good because it throws the weapon around and you can't be accurate. So by keeping your left hand very still and just pushing with your backhand, you get maximum distance, you get maximum power, and you get really good accuracy because your hand's not moving. If you pull your left hand back, your front hand back as you're stabbing, it really throws the weapon around. You can't be accurate. And the whole purpose of using a spear is to keep someone at a distance. So with that premise in mind, you wouldn't want to pull your hand back as you're stabbing because that chokes the weapon. You don't get the weapon out very far. Keep a little bend in your front arm and you make your backhand go all the way out. That gives you the maximum reach, maximum power, and you're very accurate. So that's one of the kihon or basic things that we see done wrong because people get tired or they're trying to go too fast. The other thing is you want to use the deepest horse stances possible, the highest crane that you can, and the deepest cat stances. And that's going to be really good for your development as a martial artist and as a fighter. Some people say, you know, spear's kind of old style, it's esoteric, can't carry a spear with you anymore. So what's its purpose then in the martial arts? And I'd say it's two things. One is to keep it alive because it's part of our history. That's really important. But more critical, more important is when you learn something like this and you make yourself do it exact, we'll try to show you in the film exactly how to do it, you're developing great coordination. You're making your brain really able to talk to your body and do a specific pattern in a very defined, specific way. And you're doing it over and over until you can realize that detail, and that makes you very coordinated. And Master Huang, who's Master Li's teacher, said you need two things to really be effective in martial arts. One is your spirit, your martial spirit, your attitude, your tactics, the way you think about fighting. But the other is you need to have control. If the brain has that great fighting spirit, but you can't control the machine, it's not going to do you much good. So forms, any form you learn, teaches you to have really good control. And this one's great for that aspect. It has high level of detail, and you really want to work on it until you can really do it exact, all those 120 moves. The other idea too, though, is with the 3 sectional, fighting somebody, you're allowed to hit. You actually make contact. You're not hitting each other's bodies, but you're hitting each other's weapons hard. And that's really good for the excitement, for teaching you distance, for teaching you courage to do that. It's a little bit scary, but that's a good aspect of development too. So it's an important part of your training. And I think it's one of the hardest things you'll do on your black belt test. I think on page 4, the kata exercise is a huge challenge. Kata 8 is kind of fun, not too hard, but 3 sectional and spear, pretty tough part of your test, and wants you to be really good at it. So let's cover the first part now, the sequence toward 12 o'clock. So I'll back up a little bit so you can see on camera. I'm going to come toward you, toward the camera, and that's the front, or 12 o'clock. So I'm heading in that direction. I'll back up though first so that you can kind of see what's going on. So I'm facing my opponent, which is pretty much where you are, where the camera is. I'm going to bring the weapon around to my right side. And what I'll do first, when feet together, is I'll jump into a right cat. So I'll go forward, I'll jump into a right cat stance. And from the cat stance, I'm going to look forward to my opponent. I'm going to drive this down. And if this is a Chinese spear, you drive it down pretty hard, it's flexible, and this thing will shake. So I'll feet together, I'll walk out, I'll go into the cat stance, I'll bow, and then I'll go up to my right side and do an extended bow, and I'm going to drive the weapon out on the vertical position as I look toward my opponent. So I'm just stepping off to the side, locking into position. And then from here, I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to sweep the blade down as if I'm sweeping out a couple of people, knocking them off balance. And then after I sweep them, I'll come around into a right crane. As I come into the right crane, I'll drive the weapon down onto the guy's head as I'm lifting up into the right crane. So that'd be the beginning. So I'm going to review it. I'll come around. I'm going to bow from the cat, come off to the side, lock. I'll swing through, let my hand slide back to meet the other hand, come around in a big arc, and then I'll come down onto the head with the blade as I do a high right crane. So that's that salutation, and then I'm bowing, I'm locking it off to the side, I'm doing a big swing through about knee level to sweep the guy off balance. And then I'm coming into a high defensive crane, and I'm bringing the weapon out in front of me. As I bring it out, I'm going to twist my hand down, point my finger right at the guy. So it's swinging through, and as it ends, my hand's coming down, and then at the end, I'll twist my hand. So the bones of my hand are certainly on top of the weapon. And that would add more downward impetus, more energy to that downward motion. My backhand will always be near the end, and it'll sit right on the iliac crest, right on the hip bone. So that's my base. That's how I index whenever I'm in that defensive position. That'll be sitting, that part of my wrist will be sitting right there on that bone, and the other hand will be out in front. A little bit of bend in the elbow, and you see the angle is about 45 degrees. this would be like me coming down and hitting the guy on top of his head. So has a big sweep in a high crane. I come down, hit him in the head. Then the next part of the form, I'll repeat that same thing. I'll take the weapon, do another big sweep through the legs, come up high, and then once again, I'll come down crashing into the head, just like before. The only difference is the second time you do it, you're using your feet differently. The first time, you're just going from a bow and you're coming up in after you do the sweep into a crane. The second time, you sweep again as you step into a horse, and then you jump up and you land into a horse as you hit into the head. And the way you jump is called the gazelle hop because it mimics what a gazelle does. You know, if gazelle's running, it doesn't just run in a standard way. It runs and it hops up, lifts up both feet, and then it lands. The lion's trying to grab its legs. It can't because the gazelle's hopping all the time. So in martial arts, when we do a gazelle hop, it's just you driving up your back knee and then your forward knee to give you as much jump and as much flight as possible. And then it allows you to land with your entire body weight. So if you're going to come down from a gazelle hop, as you're landing, you're going to hit really hard because you have all that force coming down with you. So that's the next part of that 12 o'clock sequence. It started with a bow, you looked at the guy, you locked it off to the side, you did a big sweep, you came into a right crane, you had your left hand right on your hip bone, your right hand turns palm down, and then from the crane, you take your right leg, you step down, you do a deep horse, big sweep. The weapon comes around behind you, you drive your knees up in the air, your left knee, then your right knee, and then you come down into a side horse, striking the head. Once again, left hand on your hip bone, right hand out in front, locked, and finger on top. And that's that same sequence done twice. One time from a stance, or starting from a stance coming into a crane. Second time, you're stepping in to a horse sweeping, and then you're driving your knees up in the air, gazelle hop, and then landing, hitting into the head. And that is the beginning of the 12 o'clock sequence. Okay, I'll run it a few times slowly, that same sequence. Let me back up. Together. Bow. Side. Sweep. Crane. Sweep in. Hit. And as you're doing those sweeps, you want your front hand to come in contact with your back hand. So you're sliding your front hand and you actually want to feel the hands touch. So you wouldn't want to try to hold solid during the sweep. I'll show you the wrong way. You wouldn't want to hold through here and then come down, but instead let your hands touch, come around, and then come back out. So there's a lot of sliding with your front hand. That allows the weapon to go a lot further away and also ultimately gives you more reach and more power when you hit and more flexibility. But if you keep your hands tight, it doesn't work out. So you want the front hand to slide. So the next step after you land from here is to do a stab. Take your back hand, stab to your front hand. Let the weapon go to your left side, over your head, and then come around with the blade and cut to the throat. So you had hit him in the head, you stab, big circle, and then hit to the throat. So that's still going toward the 12 o'clock sequence. You hit him in the head, then from the horse, you stab, big circle around over your head, and then come back and hit through the throat. And then the next thing, from there you did the stab, big circle, hit to the throat. Then come into a right cat. We're gonna do an outward block to protect you, right? So you do outward block, you're gonna do a low snap kick, and then step into a horse, cut the throat. After you cut the throat, take your weapon, you're gonna do a low stab. You're gonna stab, bring your weapon back. So you did your gazelle hop, you landed, boom, you do a stab, big circle, cut the throat, cat stance, outward block, fire your snap kick, step in, cut the neck, and then a low stab. After the low stab, you're going to come into a left cat stance. You bring the weapon to the right side of your body. Now your left foot is going to shoot out toward the corner, 45 degrees. And as you go toward the corner, you take your weapon and you're going to sweep the guy off of his legs, the three sectional guy. You step out left foot and big sweep. Bring the weapon over by your by your left ear. So your left hand is by your hip bone. Your right hand is over by your left ear. That's a big sweep. You utilized your leg and you utilized your spear at the same time. Sweep him off of his feet. Now you move into a right cat and you make a right turn. Now you've shifted from 12 o'clock and now you're going to your right side, 90 degrees. As you go to the right side, your right hand stays low and your left hand comes up. So this is using the back aspect, middle and back aspect of your weapon as a defense. You're going to come across your face. And as you do that, your right finger is still pointing down the shaft. That's always true. You're going to be in your right cat, deep cat. This blocks your face. And then you're going to come around from the cat over your head and you're going to strike down on top of his head. So when you did that right turn, after the sweep, you did a block and then you came around, struck the guy's head. And that is the end of the 12 o'clock sequence. You did your salutation, you did your bow, and then you did movement off to the right. You're just kind of showing off to the guy, a big sweep. There's no contact point there yet. A crane, you're just showing off. Then a big sweep, there's still no contact. And then when you landed from the gazelle hop, that's when you first make contact. If you look at the three sectional and the spear form, this guy's the instigator, this guy's the bully. The spear is doing the lion's share of the attacks, and the three sectional is mainly responding. So let's review again one more time that 12 o'clock sequence. It's just me back. If this is a big room, a big mat, that'd be the long part of the mat, the rectangular long wall. I'd be all the way back and all the way to my left. And then I'll come forward to about mid-mat. That's what we're doing during 12 o'clock sequence. And then I'll make a right turn and I'll go way down the mat, kind of in the middle. And then I'll come back. So let's just review again. This is the 12 o'clock sequence. Need a lot of room. Feet are together. And that's it. 12 o'clock sequence done. Now we'll start going to the right. So we've done the 12 o'clock sequence. We did our shift to the right, and now I'll be coming toward the camera, but I'll be back there initially, and this will be the progression going toward my right side, and this is after I've done that first sequence. You could call this the 3 o'clock sequence, because if you're looking at a big analog clock, we first went toward the front toward 12 o'clock, made a right turn, 90-degree shift toward 3 o'clock, and this is the part that progresses toward 3 o'clock. So let me do that part for you. Cat, block, to the head, step into a horse, stab and return. We do a left cat, comes over the head. We switch hands. Left hand goes mid-weapon, right hand comes to the back, step in with my left foot, and cut the neck. So I did that big sweep from the 12 o'clock position. I did the right cat, shifted 90 degrees. I hit the head. I step into a horse, stab, come through a left cat, switch hands, and then cut the neck. Come in, cut the neck, and that's the beginning of the 3 o'clock sequence, which is a much longer sequence than that initial 12 o'clock. So we're going to be doing a lot more striking. And you just want to remember to have your crane stances extra high, your horse stance is very low, cat's very low. Remember to grab your backhand near the end, your front hand mid-weapon, and always have your finger pointing where you want to strike. We did the shift, 90-degree shift. We did a nice block, and we hit the guy in the head. We stepped in, we did a big stab, we went over the head, came around and cut him in the neck, and we did a left cat, and we did an outward block, left cat. Then we shift our hands a little bit differently for a second. We shift down, and now our hands are symmetrical, kind of like we do in Kata 8. One is near the spearhead, one's about a quarter of the way down. That's just to give you a brace to hold you up for a second, and you're just going to throw a front leg wheel kick, and that's going to be done only about waist level, not too high, because your opponent's pretty low at that point. After you do the kick him, you're in the cat stance, kick him in the head. You're going to step into a horse, and you take the back end of your weapon, and you're going to strike out to the head and then come back. So you strike out with the back end of the weapon, and then come back into a fighting position. It's like we usually do with our hand there and our front hand pointing. But when you hit them, it was different, huh? They were symmetrical. You were near the front of the weapon. You had the back of the weapon strike out and then back to the normal fighting stance. And then the 3-sectional person swings through your legs twice to try to sweep you. The first time, you just jump up from a horse stance and you land back to a horse stance to avoid the first attack. The second time they come at your leg, you just move into a left crane. So that is escaping the sweep twice. So you land it down from the cat, you fired your wheel kick, you land, you swing, come back, jump, and then crane. And then after you do the crane, we'll be doing 3 stabs. We're going to stab out and back, out back, out, and back. And we'll be stabbing at face level. Three sectional person's gonna parry 3 times. So we're going face, face, face. See people, again, they make the mistake of they push with their backhand, they pull back with their front hand. And that's not correct. You want to keep your front hand very still. You want to come out and back. If I came at the camera, you go back and forth really fast, and you're not going to hit anything because you're controlling the movement with your front finger. You just point where you want your finger, where you want it to go. But if you're moving your hand as you do that, you're going to hit the guy or you're going to hit the camera, which you don't want to do. So you don't want to have the habit of pushing with the front and pulling back at the same time with the front hand. Push with the backhand, keep the front hand really still, and that'll give you a really good stab. Let's review that 3 o'clock sequence. We got the big sweep, cat stance, hit the head, stab, big circle, cat stance, plant, wheel kick, sweep, or I'm sorry, strike, swing out the back end, strike to the head, fighting stance, jump, crane, stab 1, stab 2, stab 3. You notice those stabs were not directed straight ahead, but they're going side of the head, side of the head, side of the head. So the last thing we did in the form is stab, stab, stab to either side of the guy's head. He parries us 3 times, and then he's gonna swing at our head. We're gonna lean back, neutral bow, and we're gonna block him with the stick. If we look at this piece of paper here, you can kind of see a pattern of how the form is going. We have here at the top, 12 o'clock, and over at the side, 3 o'clock, where my thumb is, and over here, 9 o'clock. And so far, we started down here at the bottom. That's the 6 o'clock position. This is a big, large mat or a big stage. The long wall here at 6 o'clock, that's where we're starting. And we're gonna be going all the way to the left as far as we can on that stage or on that mat. And then we're gonna go forward as we do the form to about mid-mat, where my thumb is. And then we make a right turn. We're gonna go toward 3 o'clock, and that's going right here, this direction, for a bunch of steps. A big share of the form is done doing that. And you make a big U-turn, and you come back toward 9 o'clock. That's also a huge part of the form. And then at the very end, there's just a little segment that goes towards 6 o'clock, and you end up kind of where you started, like a lot of forms, traditional forms do. So if you look at it another way, it's like a big L. You have a small base, a long line here, and then you come back. So that's just to give you an idea of the pattern. So let's go over how we do that next part of the form. We're still going toward 3 o'clock, and we're going to have the stab, 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 and we'll introduce this new idea when the 3 sectional comes at our head of leaning back out of the line of fire into a neutral bow. We bend our back leg, straighten our front leg, and our backhand comes up, and then the wooden section offers us protection. So it's 3 things. You're getting away from it, you're getting below it, and you're creating a blocking surface all in the same motion. That's a classic evasion maneuver done with the Chinese spear and a lot of other traditional weapons, but it's to get away, to go underneath, and also to create the block. Your left hand, your forward hand, will still be kind of where it was, about hip level, pointing towards your opponent, but your backhand will swing up and the front hand will become a pivot. So we'll go over how that works, and then we're going to be doing some more attacks in that direction. All right, let's review where we were last time. We did the big sweep out toward 45 degrees after ending the 12 o'clock sequence. Swept through. Then a right cat stance toward 3 o'clock. Make that right turn. Did a block. You hit toward the head. Stepped in. Stabbed and then returned. Came through a cat stance. Switch hands. We stepped in with the left foot. We cut the neck. We came back to a horse stance. Outward block. Planted down for support. front leg wheel, then strike to the head, back in, come back. We jumped up, we landed, we did a high left crane, we do a stab, 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 and then we lean back, neutral bow, and block. We then go to an extended bow, we reach out, stab, then we're going to come into a left crane stance as we bring the weapon back. Then we'll step into another stab to the face, and we're going to shuffle in, cut low to the leg, and then cut high to the neck. So after we did the neutral bow evasion, we leaned back away, we got the blocking surface, we did an extended bow, we leaned in, big stab, then we went to a left crane, we then stepped in, stabbed the face again from a horse, we shuffle in, we're going to cut low and then cut high. So when you do that part, your front hand's kind of a pivot, it doesn't really move much, but your backhand comes up high to offer more energy to the low cut. But also that, as you're cutting, that protects your head, right? So as you cut down with your left, your right hand's up high protecting you. And then you swing it opposite. Your left goes higher, your right goes low, and you can cut to the neck. You then cross step away from your opponent and you do another block. So you're cross stepping, blocking at the same time with the low end of your weapon. But you could bring both low, but then your head's open, right? So as your left goes low, your right goes high, and that protects you. And the stance is basically like what we're used to with a cross step, but it's a little bit more pronounced, so you don't step as wide as a horse stance width. About 20% less, and then you bend your knees more than you're used to. So we call it the dragon stance because you're coiled up like a dragon. The bones of your legs touch each other, and one knee pushes beyond the other knee. So it's like a very deep cross step. The concept is to get you lower, which is good for protection, and your body is more coiled. It's like pulling your hand further and further back in a set position. Then when you release, you have more potential energy, right? Same principle. So a dragon stance should be used because it's very traditional type of a movement in the Chinese system, but it takes a little getting used to. You want to have your cross step starting less width than you're used to, less than a horse. You have to bend your knees a lot more than you're used to. So I'll try to show you again. So comes up on camera, my left foot is cross stepping in front of my right. And then I'm gonna bend. Get a little further away. I'll bend. This knee will push out beyond my left knee, my right knee. My back foot knee is coming beyond my other knee, and the bones of my legs are in contact with each other. So I could sit there for a long time, sit there and have tea for a couple hours because it's kind of like I'm in a chair. My bones are locked together, and that's the kind of stance we want to do. It's hard to do at high speed, but if you're just walking through it, definitely get as low as you can with the idea of being more coiled for more release of energy and being lower. So we call this sequence the stab, 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 neutral bow, big stab, crane, stab the face, cut low, cut high. It has a funny name. We call it the mushy middle because it's kind of in the middle of the form, and it tends to be kind of mushy in people's heads. They have trouble with this part because I think there's some repetition in there. There's a lot of stabbing, and you have to know the order the stabs go in. So this is a part of the form that'd be good once you learn it to do over and over and over. That's when we've already jumped up and landed from our horse. We did a left crane, and then there's a series of 3 stabs. That's when the mushy middle begins. Stab, stab, stab. Then you lean way back, neutral bow. You get your weapon up there to protect you. Then you do a big extended stab. You reach way in. Then you go from the extended stab to a high crane. Protect yourself with your weapon. You step into a horse. You do another stab to the face. Then you shuffle in to get closer, and you cut in toward his leg, and then you cut toward his throat. And then lastly, you cross step into dragon, and you block low. And that's kind of the end of the mushy middle. Then the whole form takes basically a U-turn. You spin around, hit the guy in the head, and now you're facing a different direction. So that's some new information in the form, and it is advised by all the teachers who've ever taught this that it's wise when you learn the mushy middle, that stab, 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 that whole sequence, to do it 20 times maybe before you try to learn more, introduce more, build more, to really get it locked in. I tell students a lot of times, years ago when my daughter Katrina was getting ready for her black belt, Sifu Shepherd was helping her, and I used to go with my little boy Jared. He was just a little guy then. We'd go to the park in Berkeley. We'd wait for her to get done with her training, be 2 or 3 hours. And many times when we were there, we'd see an older guy would be on the tennis court, and he'd have a Chinese spear, not one of these, but a real Chinese spear. And he would go there and he would do a couple of moves with the Chinese spear, maybe 1 or 2 moves. Like he'd shuffle in, stab, then he would shuffle in and do a low cut, and then he would just do that over and over and over and over and over and over. And all the hours we were there, Jared and I, at the playground, this guy would be just doing that over and over and over. He's probably, I would guess him being around 70 years old. And then he would take a little water, and then he would do it again, again, again. And then the second time that my daughter was doing a format, and Jared and I were there, I saw this guy. He was doing the same thing, but he had added a 3rd step. So he would do the 2 things he did previously, and now he would add another stab. And I was just intrigued because I would see him go for hours and hours. And I finally asked him, I said, I'm really impressed with your martial art ability, and do you study around here? And he said, yeah, I have a teacher who's teaching me private lessons. We're learning the Chinese spear. And he said for me to do any new move that I learn 1,000 times between then and the next lesson. I was like, wow, that's so traditional. That's really good. That's the way it should be. So I think for most of us Americans, we don't have that kind of patience. We're like, well, I want to learn more. I want to learn more. But it is really smart to have this down and really get it and have it be a strong part of your black belt test. To have that mindset, maybe not 1,000, but let's do a lot of reps of a particular sequence before we entertain the idea of learning more, because it's hard on you otherwise. It's too much of a load on your memory. It's really wise to burn them in and even give yourself a full night's rest, a whole day in between, for this stuff to log into your brain. The old expression, let me sleep on it, is really true. When you get a good night's sleep, it'll log it into your long-term memory, and you'll be good. You'll never forget the form. So that's good advice, and especially true of this section that we just learned, the mushy middle. Let's do a little bit more now. So we did the stab, stab, stab. We leaned way back, neutral bow. We avoided attack. Then we reached way in with a stab. Then we did a high crane to avoid getting attacked to the leg. We stepped in, stabbed to the throat again. We shuffled in. We did a low cut toward the ankle and a cut toward the throat. Then we cross-stepped away and we did another low blocking motion. Now from there, we're in a deep dragon stance. We're just gonna spin out of that. We're gonna turn into a bow stance, and we're gonna hit the guy in the head. 3 sectional guy will lean back away using his front section neutral bow. He'll block you, but that's kind of where we are in the form. So we had shuffled in. We did the low, high. Now we cross-stepped away to dragon. We did the low block. Now we turn, still facing toward 3 o'clock. We're in a hard bow, and we're going to get this on our hip, and we're going to strike into the head. So we spun around, smack the guy in the head. We did stab, 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 neutral bow. We leaned way in, we did a crane. We stepped in, we did a stab to the throat. We shuffled in, low, high. We cross-stepped away. We blocked. We turned into a hard bow. Hard bow, strike the head. So we were in dragon. Bow, turn around. Hard bow, cut to the head. Now we're going to do a right crane. This will be parallel, about chin level to the mat as we do a right crane to avoid our leg getting cut. We're going to jump over an attack and we'll let the weapon go off to our right side. We were in a bow, left leg back. We did a right crane to avoid our right leg getting hit. We jumped over an attack and then we let the weapon go to our right side. Our left foot will now shoot off to our left as we take our weapon and we sweep him off of his feet. So I cross-stepped away, dragon. I turned around, hard bow. I'll do a right crane to avoid my leg getting cut. I jump up, sweep. Now I'm going to cross-step, going toward the camera, 3 o'clock, but a little bit of an angle off to my left, toward the corner. Cross-step this way, and I'm going to hit toward that corner. I step that corner, I'm going to hit toward that corner. This is over by my right hip. This is over by my shoulder. Now I'm going to go to a left cat. If I do the left cat, I'm going to swing the weapon. Now I'm grabbing near the spear end, both palm down. The back end is going to hit the guy in the face. So I went dragon, turn, bow, then right crane, then jump, sweep, cross step, strike the face, cat stance, left cat, hit the face. Now I'm going to put all the weight on my left leg, and I'm going to cross step right foot in front of left to dragon. I'm going to take my hands and spread them out. Not a conventional grip anymore. I'm going to do this. I'm going to create this blocking surface to protect my head. So, dragon, rotate, going toward 3 o'clock now. Bow, hit the head, right crane, jump, sweep. I'll cross step toward the corner, hit toward this corner. Then cat stance, hit the face. Then I'll put all my weight on my left foot and I'll block toward 9 o'clock. Shifting direction, block toward 9 o'clock, rotate, hard bow, hitting with the back end of the spear, hitting over the head. And now I did that U-turn. Now I'm going toward 9 o'clock. So I did a lot of stuff toward 3 o'clock, a whole mushy middle, and then I made a turn, and now I'm going to do a bunch of things facing the other direction. So we're starting to kind of see the pattern. So I went dragon, came around bow, right crane, jump, sweep, strike the head, strike the face, put all the weight on the left foot, cross step, block toward 9 o'clock, then turn, rotate, hard bow, hit toward 9 o'clock. Now I'm going to do some spins, and I'm going to be facing 9 o'clock, but my opponent through sectional is going to be spinning toward me, and I need to get away from him. So I'm still traveling toward 3 o'clock, but I have my back toward 3 o'clock. I'm facing 9 o'clock. I'm trying to get away, and I'm going to spin it. When you spin a staff or a 3 sectional or a spear or a guandao, it's the same thing. It kind of depends how you want to hold it, but the premise is the same. You want to spin the weapon so that it creates interference. It's hard for the guy to attack you because he can't see any opening. Every time he wants to hit something, the weapon is spinning around. So when you spin it, you want to hold it in the middle. You want to hold pretty loose. You don't want to hold tight. You don't want to be too far apart because that'll make it really awkward. You want to be near the middle. Keep your knees bent. And don't try moving your feet yet, just try spinning. And as you spin, allow your shoulder to turn every time. So imagine if I painted this with fresh white paint, and I have my black shirt on. I use this a lot when I teach this shirt. I don't want to get white paint right here. So what do I have to do? This is all painted, this is all painted. As I'm spinning it, as this thing starts to come in, I don't want it to hit me and put paint on me, right? So what do? I rotate, and then here it comes. It's going to try to put paint on this shoulder, but instead what I do is I rotate, and I want to hold really loose. And that makes it pretty easy. I want to be relaxed, hold loose. Same with 3 sectional. It's kind of counterintuitive though, because you know, a lot of times people are worried that the spear or the guandao or the 3 sectional is going to hit their leg or hit them somewhere. So they get tight because they don't want to get hit. But when you tense up your muscle, what it does is it makes it not spin right. And instead of the weapon moving on a vertical axis, nice and straight on your side, and then nice and straight on your other side, it tends to move more in at a diagonal, and it's more apt to hit you. So, seems odd, counterintuitive, but the looser you're holding, the more relaxed you can be, the less likely you're going to get hit. That's why people who've had a lot of experience with weapons, they can spin really fast and they tend not to get hit. It's not so much that they're just very used to it, but they've gotten over the fear of it, so they've learned to relax. And then you're less likely to get hit. So as you're spinning it, once you get some good spin speed up, then you want to back up away from the 3 sectional guys coming after you. You want to back up. You don't want to take big steps though to back up. You want to back up quickly, but smaller steps. So only about shoulder width as you back up. The bigger your steps are, the more it will tend to rotate your hip, and that can introduce a new vector, which can make your spins with whatever weapon, this or 3 sectional, too dangerous, too wild. So keeping your hip pretty straight, you want to back up, and you want to use smaller stances, but more of them so you can get out of there pretty fast. And if you're on a stage, you want to back up really far. You want to fill that stage with your backing up. If you have a short stage, you can't do that. Then you have to take less steps. If you're on a large mat in one of the schools and you're doing it, keep going until you run out of room. And that creates a better practice for you. That's a very traditional thing to do. You fill the room, or you fill the area with the sequence you're practicing. Typically though, for most people, you're going to go back about 4 or 5 times on your retreat, and that's going to fill up most of the mats and most of the areas where you'd be on stage. So we're backing up, and the 3 sectional guys coming at us with a pretty scary horizontal attack that we'll talk about later. So that should conclude for now. We got us all the way through 12 o'clock. We got us all the way through 3 o'clock. And all we're doing now is we're facing a different direction, 9 o'clock, but we're still moving. Our body is moving toward 3 o'clock for a little bit longer, all 5 of those steps as we're spinning. And then finally, we'll end up in a left crane, big high crane, and you'll be pulling your weapon back. And that'll be fully the end of that direction. Let me show you guys what that would look like. So I flip the camera around. I'm a different part of this backyard now. I'm moving away from the camera toward 9 o'clock. I'm facing you guys. You guys are at 3 o'clock. I'm moving away from you and I'm doing those spins. When I get to the end of that travel, then I'll start doing all my attacks coming towards you, coming toward 3 o'clock. In essence, I made that U-turn and I'm going back to where I started. So let me show you where we are. I turned around to a hard bow. I hit with the back end of the weapon. Now I'm going to go feet together, bring my left foot away from you guys. I'm going to start spinning the weapon, and then I'll back up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I'll come into a crane. So as I'm backing up, spinning it. But when I get to the end of that travel, I'm going to lift my front hand over, end up in that same pointed finger position, down by my left hip, and my right hand will be up high. So I'm spinning away. When I get to the end of that, I go left crane, slow motion, spinning. I'm at the end of it now. I flip my front hand over, and as I do that, I lift up my left leg crane. And that's the end of that motion in the form going toward that direction. And now I'm going to start going back with my attacks. I'm going to move toward where I came from, toward 3 o'clock.